Oh no, I just fucked that up, didn't I? I just spent ages talking about that and Bobby Green didn't win last night. Okay, hello. Welcome to the Go Grab That Day podcast. It's a very hot and humid day here in lovely Auckland, so forgive me if I look like I'm sweating my ass off, because I am. Yeah, we're going to get into this, the UFC fight night, Uriah Hall versus Anderson Silva in a minute. Just want to start by saying thanks to everyone who keeps liking and sharing, and I'm getting some messages and feedback from some people on the YouTube channel, which is great, and please keep doing that and do it as often as you can. I'd love to hear back from you. Any suggestions or anything like that, you know, on things you'd like me to talk about. As I said, I'm going to cover a lot more things other than fights. You know, I did one on movies, I'll do some more stuff like that, and there will be other things. I'll talk about a bit of everything, but any suggestions would be great, and I'll gladly, you know, take them on board and see how we go. But yeah, thanks, keep sharing and liking and all that kind of thing, and I'll keep getting videos out as often as possible. Thank you. So, getting into this fight card, Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall. So, for a fight night, this is a very good card, especially after such a big card last week, the Khabib one. It was really interesting, a lot of good fights worth watching. So I'm just going to get straight into it. I'll start off with Bobby Green versus Thiago Moises. This was a good fight. Bobby Green wasn't happy with the decision in the end. I kind of agree. I think maybe Bobby Green was a little better throughout the fight, but it was still close enough to kind of see it go either way. I think Bobby Green would have broken Neil Magny's record of like 4 wins in such a short period of time. I don't know the numbers exactly, but had he won last night, because he's been very active lately. But good win for Thiago Moises. Yeah, obviously Bobby Green wasn't happy, but I can understand why the judges might have given it that way. And like Dana likes to say, you can't depend on the judges or leave it in the hands of the judges. But no, it was pretty fun fight. Like a lot of Bobby Green's fights, they are very good. He's been around a while, but I think people are kind of starting to notice him a bit now. I am anyway, but he is an interesting character, and he's a fun character inside the cage as well. And his fights are fun, you know, they're high paced, you know, from the start to the end, like they're always very good. But he didn't go his way last night, and a good win for Thiago Moises. Just going to move on past that one. On to the middleweight division, which was the Kevin Holland versus Tavaros. And yeah, for those of you that didn't watch this fight, there was a little bit of a scare in the fight. It was the first round. Yeah, the first round. It's gone down as a submission win for Kevin Holland, but for those of you that didn't see it, Tavaros had a weird kind of a neck issue or injury. They were clinching up against the cage, so say face to face, and Kevin Holland kind of had his hands clasped together behind Tavaros' head in kind of a thigh clinch, but a little more underhook kind of wrestling style. But yeah, and then I don't know, did he trip or did the two of them fall, but he was trying to take him down, and they both kind of fell at the same time. And as he came down on Tavaros, you could hear kind of I'll call it a moan, or sort of a painful shout out of Tavaros, and he started saying to the ref, my neck. But the scary thing, like when I was watching, I was a bit late to these fights, but I didn't know any of the results. And when you see him saying that there was no physical tap, it was a verbal tap. So when you see that, and he was screaming his neck with no movement, I think everybody was worried like it might be paralysis or something serious. Apparently after the fight, like Dana White said, no, that it was all good. He was moving his hands, he had all his feeling and stuff like that. So hopefully it was something like maybe a trapped nerve, or you know, nothing too serious. But it was hard to watch at the time because you thought it was something really serious, and he had to get stretchered out as well and all of that. But you know, hopefully he's okay. Only new to the UFC and he's young too, so yeah, hopefully it's nothing serious. It might just be a trapped nerve or something small, hopefully. Nevertheless, it's a win for Kevin Holland. Goes down as a submission. He immediately called out Israel Adesanya afterwards, who was there watching the fights. There was a lot of banter going over and back between the two of them. I think he needs to slow down just a little bit and relax, pump the brakes, because he's way off fighting Izzy. He's way off that standard just yet. But he is an interesting character. He's fun. Like he's always talking to his opponents in the cage and talking shit about them in the cage or afterwards, and he is a fun character, and his fights are usually interesting. He did say in the interview afterwards with Michael Bisping that something had happened between him and Adesanya previously, not that night but previously, so in Vegas at some point. He didn't say much more other than kind of Izzy tried to say something or something like that, and he said he was pulling him up on it, in the fights yesterday. So it was funny to see them go over and back, but he definitely needs a few more wins against some bigger names before he goes fighting Izzy. But a bit like Bobby Green, he's an interesting character too, and a fun one to watch. So good addition to that middleweight division too. Get somebody start talking and pumping up fights against Izzy. Might keep Izzy in the division, which I don't know now, but yeah, it was funny to see that. But thankfully, or hopefully, Charlie Tavaros is okay. I haven't heard much news other than what Dana White said yesterday, but hopefully it's nothing serious, because man, it was spooky to see. But nevertheless, good win for Kevin Holland. Moving on, I think Kevin Holland is on a 4-fight win streak now as well. Came into the UFC from the Contender Series, I believe. But I think he's on a 4-fight win streak, which is good too, in a small period of time. But now moving on to the heavyweight fight. It's a good fight too. Maurice Green versus Greg Hardy. Maurice Green, I think is how you pronounce his name, versus Greg Hardy. Yeah, this is a good fight, like it usually is. It's very tense between the heavyweights, and two very, very big guys. Of course, I'm sure people know, or if you don't know, Greg Hardy, who, yes, is a heavyweight, managed to miss weight. He got on the scales before the fight and he was too heavy, yes, as a heavyweight. And they gave him an hour to lose. I think it was like half a pound or a pound, and he lost it, and it was all good. But it makes you wonder about discipline. If as a heavyweight you're not able to stay within the weight limit, which is stupid anyway, to have a weight limit at heavyweight. I think it's stupid, but nevertheless you got to go by the rules. But yeah, not good that Greg Hardy, for people that don't know, he became, I suppose, infamous because he was a pro NFL player. Not that I know anything about that, but I know he came from the NFL. There's a little bit of controversy because he'd been in trouble for supposedly, I don't know if you want to call it domestic abuse, but supposedly physically assaulting an ex-girlfriend or something like that. And obviously that kind of tarnishes his reputation before he got there. But Dana White gave him a chance in the UFC. And he came in there, and I can't remember which fight it was, but in one of his fights, I actually think in his debut, he got disqualified for an illegal knee. So that's on top of the allegations from his ex-girlfriend, which is bad enough. And then in another fight, which he won, I believe, but he used an inhaler, like for asthma, which doesn't sound that bad, and I didn't think it was that bad, but apparently it's illegal to use them during fights, because they if you know anyone that has asthma, what they do is they help open up your airwaves. So even if you don't have asthma and you use an inhaler during a fight, if you're out of breath and you're tired, that will help you, get the air back into your lungs. So he got in trouble for that too, which, adds a little bit of controversy. You throw in the missing weight on top of that. It makes, if you're someone that doesn't like Greg Hardy, like me, I originally didn't like him because I thought he was an arrogant, he was arrogant, he has an arrogant way about him, and obviously the things with his ex-girlfriend, but he kind of grew on me a bit because his performances aren't bad, but he keeps doing these things, which doesn't help. But nevertheless, it was a good win for him. Good finish. Like he for a big guy, he's very athletic, which you'd expect coming from the NFL. But Maurice Green I think he's 6'7", and he moves well for a big guy. Greg Hardy's a little smaller. I think he's 6'3", 6'4". But no, he looked very good, and there's one or two grappling exchanges, which is Greg Hardy's weak point, and he looked better than what he has previously looked. But anyway, he managed to TKO Maurice Green. He dropped him with a heavy, you want to call it like a corkscrew jab, which is like kind of a mix between an uppercut and a jab. But it was hard. Like he put Green out for a little bit, and then there was some ground and pound. Green kind of disputed the stoppage. I think Herb Dean was the ref. He disputed the stoppage, but if you look at it back, he was out, and even if he wasn't fully out, he was going to go out because Hardy was right above him, ready to swing a couple of more punches, and his arm, the way Green had fallen, his arm to protect his head had kind of got trapped underneath, so he was about to get clean put out cold had Herb Dean not stopped it, and he was pretty much out of it. But no, good win for Greg Hardy, and to be fair to Green, after he argued a little bit, he went over and shook hands, and he was respectful, to be fair to him. But yeah, good win for Greg Hardy. The other thing is, which I noticed, again going back to, I'm not picking on Greg Hardy, but you have to say these things. Obviously he missed weight, but he was breathing super heavy, like even in his, after I think it was the fight finished in the second round, but at the end of the first he was breathing super heavy. And after an exchange where they were on the ground and Hardy was doing well, he was on top, landing some big shots, but when they were stood back up, when they got up, you could hear his breathing, obviously with no crowd, and it was real heavy. And afterwards, in the interview with Bisping, he was like super trying to catch his breath, and he was really, obviously if he's got an inhaler, maybe there's previous asthma issues or something like that, but as well as that, if your asthma is that bad, perhaps you shouldn't be fighting in the UFC. But no, he's breathing super bad, so I'd say maybe it's a case of poor discipline as well, which it's something he should address, because all along he's had Dean Thomas in his corner, who, people that don't know, Dean Thomas is one of the top coaches in the UFC. He used to fight in the UFC a few years back, and he spent some time on The Ultimate Fighter, but he coached at American Top Team for a long time, and then recently he's kind of gone out on his own now, but he's helped coach some really good fighters down through the years. So he's in his corner, has been since the beginning, and now you've got Rashad Evans in his corner as well. You should know Rashad Evans if you're watching the UFC, but Rashad is an ex-UFC champion. Is he light heavyweight or middleweight? Light heavyweight. Fought at middleweight too, and fought at heavyweight, but also won the Ultimate Fighter at heavyweight. So yeah, fought some huge names down through the years, but that's another great guy to have in your corner. But he's got to get his discipline maybe a bit better. There could be a reason for it. Maybe something happened. That's why his cardio was so bad in this fight, and that's why he missed weight. But it just doesn't make for good reading when you see the little things that are kind of stacking up against him. Which again is a shame, because he is, any of his fights I've watched, he's a fun fighter to watch. For a big guy, he moves fast, and he's got heavy hands, even for a heavyweight. Like he's above average with how heavy his hands are, and he does look better every time. He's improving, especially with those guys in his corner. So hopefully he gets these discipline issues right, or whatever is going on. Hopefully he gets them right, and you get to see him plant some better performances in the future. Just stop eating fatty. But moving on to the co-main. So we have Bryce Mitchell versus Andre Touchy. But this was, I think I said previously on a podcast how I'd mentioned Bryce Mitchell was one of those guys to kind of keep an eye on for the featherweight division. Where he's ranked, I'm not certain right now, but he's one of those guys to keep an eye on. He's climbing his way up. A wicked jiu-jitsu fighter, wicked grappler, striking not the best, but slowly improving each time. He was put to the test. So he won the fight by decision, but really put to the test in this fight against a veteran in Andre Fili, who comes from Uriah Faber's camp. And Andre Fili is a good striker, good all-round game, but a good striker. But the difference in this fight, Fili was winning the fight mostly in the standing part, but Bryce Mitchell his grappling, just that's what controlled the fight. In the first two, I think I would have given Mitchell the first round. Second round is debatable. Maybe give the second round to Feely, but then the third round, Mitchell controlled it towards the end. He landed a couple of, even striking, he landed a couple of good shots, and then, kind of disguised the takedown with some of his strikes, which was really good. And then when he got him down, he did control him. Feely throughout the entire fight was doing well getting back up, but eventually it just did wear on him, and Mitchell was able to keep him down. But Bryce Mitchell is another guy. He's fun to watch, fun to listen to, and just a funny character. He's if you just listen to some of his interviews, he is quite interesting. He is a guy who's improving all the time, and I think he's one to keep an eye out for the future. If his striking gets better, he's wicked. Even if his striking doesn't get better, he's still wicked. He's still very hard to stop his takedowns. He's one of these guys, even if you stop it, he's going to go again and go again until he gets you down, and he keeps you down. And his jiu-jitsu is wicked. I think he's the second guy to ever have a twister finish in the UFC. And he has tried it quite a few times, so he does mean it. They're not like accidental submissions he happens to come across. But good win for him, and good character. I was glad to see him win it, because Feely's been around a while. It's nice to see, Mitchell, who's a new guy coming up, do well. So moving on to the main event. Well, what I'm going to say first is, actually, they had announced during this card the return of the Ultimate Fighter. I think it's March of next year. Which there's a lot, like, for those people that don't know, which you should know, what the Ultimate Fighter is basically, it's kind of a feeder show for the UFC, and kind of a reality show. It's where they bring two teams of fighters to be coached by current fighters, and they live in a house together. They train together. The teams train together. They don't train, they train opposite each other, but there'll be a team that trains together, if that makes sense. I went the hard way about explaining that. But anyway, and these teams will compete against each other, and obviously goes on to a winner getting a contract with the UFC. But that's a really good show. It's gotten a lot of slack in the last few years. Kind of people saying that it doesn't need to be around anymore. Being honest, I actually love it. I'm so glad to see it back. I think it's brilliant. I've rewatched so many of the seasons. Like, I have them all on my legal streaming thing here, and I watch them all the time. They're really enjoyable. I'm a fan of those kind of reality shows anyway, some of them, but this is like reality show mixed with, it's like Big Brother mixed with real fighters, which is pretty good. But no, I'm delighted to see them bringing it back, and supposedly, what I've heard, they're going to bring it back and kind of revamp it a little bit, which is good, because I do think it's a good show. I can understand people's arguments against it, because it's been quite a few years since they brought like legit superstars out of it. But I mean, superstars are hard to come across anyway, and there is no harm in feeding the UFC with more talent, and I think it's a good way for the guys to get a good look at some of these guys. Put them under the pressure of living in a house with other fighters, with cameras on them all the time, and not having their phones or their families around. I think that's what it's good, and it does make for interesting TV. But again, I love it. I'm delighted to see it back. I hope it comes back full time, and it's twice a year like it used to be, or once a year even. And it'll be interesting to see what two coaches they decide to pick. I haven't heard anything. I know previously they had talked about Khabib and Conor, which I don't see happening. But it'd be interesting that it'd be good to see who they decide to bring in. There's lots of interesting coaches out there you could put on. But I think the divisions, actually, sorry, I should have said, the divisions they're going to put into it is, there's going to be bantamweight and middleweight. I think it's the two men's divisions. They're going to have middleweight fighters and bantamweight fighters coming into the house. But that's all I know. That's all they kind of announced, which is, I was delighted to hear it. I know there's a lot of people who think they should just get rid of it, but not for me. I think bring it back. It's brilliant. I find it very entertaining, and who knows, you might get a superstar out of it. Like I said, it's been a long time since you got a major superstar, but some of the biggest fighters in the early years came out of it. Like you're talking Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, Nate Diaz, obviously heaps, like, you know, Diego Sanchez. There's a lot of fighters come out. Now they are the very early years, but still, you know, superstars are hard to come by, so you can't kind of always blame the Ultimate Fighter for not producing these superstars, you know. Bring it back, I say, and bring it back for good, you know. But I was delighted to hear that. So moving on to the main event, which is Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall. Not a bad fight. It's kind of entertaining while it lasted, but I'm quite tired of seeing these, you know, fighters that used to be fantastic and they're just hanging on for too long. And it was hard. It was good, obviously, to, you know, Anderson is a legend. If you watch the UFC, if those of you who are new to the UFC and you don't know who Anderson Silva is, take 10 minutes out and watch some of his highlights. Like, there's still people, like, Anderson was in his prime 10 years ago, even more, 10, 12 years ago, and people still haven't caught up to his striking. You could probably say Adesanya is the only guy, but Adesanya, like, mimicked his game off of Anderson Silva. But yeah, this fight, it was okay to watch, but you kind of felt at some point Anderson was going to get caught. Just like Uriah Hall, he's not the cream of the crop. You know, a prime Anderson Silva would beat Uriah Hall 7 days a week. And this is kind of what irritates me. Like it happened in the Izzy fight. Now, fair enough, Izzy is a different breed. Adesanya is quality. He would probably beat that. He could possibly beat Anderson in his prime. That would have been a great fight to see. But after the Adesanya fight, I think after the Cannonier fight and after the Hall fight, you see these guys after they beat Silva and they're hugging him and they're emotional afterwards and they're apologising for what they've done, and it irritates the shit out of me simply because I understand why they're emotional. But it's just so annoying to see these guys that would not beat him in his prime. Izzy, excluding Adesanya, he could probably do it. But Uriah Hall would not stand a chance with a prime Anderson Silva. Cannonier, I don't believe, will stand a chance against a prime Anderson Silva. But you're watching these guys now beat him because he's way past it. It's not their fault. I'm just saying it's irritating to watch, because I've had to watch at least 3 fights now where, you know, Silva's emotional afterwards. These guys that beat him are emotional because they don't want to beat him. Well, so they say. But, you know, they don't. They looked up to him and now they're beating him. And it's probably a little easier than it should be because of how good he was. And I'm just tired of seeing it. I want to see him retire, you know. It looked like last night he did retire. You know, he was kind of crying in the cage. He spent a long time in the cage and it was emotional to see, to be fair. But then in his interview, Bisping, he kind of said he was retired but not retired, and it didn't really. But I just want him to retire, just end it, because he's a legend. He's you know, cream of the crop. I can see why people call him the GOAT. You know, I'm not even going to get into that GOAT argument now because I'm so sick of it. But I can understand why people would put him up there. Great fighter, one of the greatest strikers to ever set foot into MMA, still today, and will be for a long time. Bar people like Adesanya, who, as I said, mimicked their game off him. But there's too many of these fighters that hang on too long. You see them getting their asses handed to them, and by fighters that they would beat easily in their prime. I don't want to completely disrespect Uriah Hall because, you know, I don't dislike Uriah Hall, but Uriah Hall is not on Anderson's level, a prime Anderson's level, which again isn't his fault because, you know, he can only beat what's put in front of him. They put Anderson Silva in front of him, so, you know. But yeah, it wasn't nice to watch because the fight before the finish was enjoyable because Silva was kind of doing some of his prime Silva movements, and it was nice to see because you like Anderson Silva. But I didn't at any point think he was going to win the fight. I wanted him to win. I was praying he would win just so he could finish on a win. But he never at any point looked like he had the power that Hall had, or, you know, Silva's chin is just not there anymore. And even in the finish, I'm not trying to sound like some sort of a striking professional. I'm just a fan. I don't want to sound like any more than that. But the way Anderson came in and got caught is not what prime Anderson Silva would have done. Like, he squared up with Hall. He had 1 foot leaving the ground, both hands down, chin in the air. like, how many more times you gotta see this? You know, to see fighters, like it happened with BJ Penn, just going on for too long. I think it's happening with Diego Sanchez now. Maybe Donald Cerrone. Cerrone not too bad, but maybe him too. You know, there has to be. I think the UFC needs to start making these decisions a little earlier. You know, stop trying to squeeze these guys for all they're worth. You know, you got some of their best years out of them. They gave you so much money. Silva has brought in so much money for the UFC. You know, have a word with them. Tell them to retire. If you need to, you know, help them out with a job in the UFC, whatever. But stop letting them hang around. So they're getting these. It's so annoying to get beat by guys that do not belong on their level if they're in their prime. But look, that's just, again, you can't blame these guys. I say all this, but not Adesanya. Adesanya is as good as Silva was in his prime, maybe a little better. But it's just these other guys that they're not as good as him. They couldn't, to use a football term, they couldn't lace his boots, you know, in his prime. But he's 46 now, 45, whatever he is. He's well past that. So I really hope he has retired, and I don't want to see any more of this kind of, you know, guys that, as I said, BJ Penn did it where he was getting beaten by guys that he should not be getting beaten by, and beaten bad. You know, they're getting knocked out, and Silva was knocked out bad in that fight last night. He woke up and regained himself pretty quick, and I think he tried to put it off that maybe he wasn't that bad, but you see when Herb Dean stopped the fight, Silva was grappling with Herb Dean, grabbing onto his legs, which tells you he didn't know that it was Herb Dean. He thought it was Uriah Hall. So yeah, that's my rant over. Just, you know, credit to Hall, but these guys are not, you know, it's just irritating to see. I want to see Silva retire, and I hope he's done. I hope he doesn't come back. Don't go fighting anywhere else. Just retire, become a coach. Go get old. You know, it's a young man's game, or a younger man. Like, it's fair enough you're going to fight late, but fight somewhat near to your prime, or look like you have the ability that you used to have, a little bit at least. And I don't like shitting on Anderson Silva because he's brilliant. Was brilliant, but it's just not what he used to be, and it happens in every sport. Guys got to retire. But yeah, that's my rant over. He good win for Uriah Hall. You know, I like Uriah Hall. He's a guy who struggled a lot with, you know, mental weakness or mental. His mind used to beat him in a lot of his fights, so maybe this will give him confidence and he'll go on to do well. But like I said, it just irritates me. I'm sick of seeing these people, you know, all apologies afterwards because they know that in the prime this guy would wipe the floor with him. But yeah, that's my rant over, and that's the fight card done. Went on a bit of a rant there, but it's just, as I said, it's just another example like would be you saw with Chuck Liddell, who, to be fair to Dana White, had told him to retire, but they're obviously friends, supposedly they're friends outside of the UFC. But he had told Chuck Liddell about retiring, and eventually Chuck Liddell came back against Tito Ortiz. You know, they were big rivals in their heyday, but the difference is Tito had continued fighting, not doing super well, but continued staying active in Bellator. And he eventually got Chuck to take another fight the third time they fought, and he knocked Chuck out cold, which he would not do if they were back in their prime. And it's just, like I said, it's just irritating to see these guys hang on long enough until they become a shell of themselves. And I don't know what it's like to be. I can imagine to be a pro fighter, it's very hard to let go of those things, which I do understand. But surely it's got to be worse to see yourself, as I said, become a shell of your previous self. Yeah, just for me, I don't like to see it. I'd like to see these. That's why I kind of enjoy it when I hear, you know, supposedly Khabib has retired, Henry Cejudo, you know, who retired, GSP, these guys who retired that could still do it, but have retired. I'm not a big fan of Henry Cejudo, he drives me crazy, but still good to see. It's still good to see guys retire when they're healthy, you know, without taking too many bad knocks or bad damage. Look at Ben Askren as well, who had a career in one championship where I think he'd gone like 5 or 6 fights without even being hit. Then he came to the UFC and he'd been choked out, knocked out, and went through a war with Robbie Lawler in his 3 fights. But smartly decided to retire. You know, he was done after that. He didn't see any reason to stick around. But Ben Askren is one of those guys who is smart. He's got things set up outside of fighting, and that is the problem. Some of these guys, that's all they have. They haven't set themselves up for when they retire. But it'd be nice to see the UFC maybe show them how to do that. You know, when a fighter comes in, to maybe have a program or something, or someone there that can say, listen, I don't know, but something to help set them up so that they're not clinging on to their career too long. So the UFC can confidently say, or comfortably say, look, your time has come, you know, we're not going to see you past this fight. You know, give them their one last fight, their swan song, and let them leave. And hopefully they have something, whether it's a nest egg or another business to go into. But surely, surely Silva back in Brazil would have plenty of business opportunities or things where he could make money. I mean, on appearances alone, surely he'd make money. No, I don't know for sure. But again, I think it just comes down to it's hard for these guys to let go of something they've done all their lives and something they put so much into, and they became the best at it. But yeah, I do get it, but I just don't like to see it. I wish the UFC would, you know, a few steps earlier step in. Dana White has done it in some occasions or some cases. You know, he said recently that he's going to do with Cowboy Cerrone, and I don't even think Cowboy's hung on as far as some of these other guys. But I would like to see it. You know, I don't like to see these legends getting squeezed for every drop that they're worth. You know, just using them as stepping stones to give a name to these new guys. You know, let the new guys earn their name the way the legends have done. Not by shitting on these legends or, you know, beating them when they're well past their prime. So I'd just like to see them have a better way of dealing with these things. I did see that Conor McGregor tweeted, you know, something about, I better find the tweet, I thought I had it already here. Yeah, so McGregor's tweet was, sad to see tonight, but I say keep going. Real fighters never lose that fire, so why try force it out? Simply put time into finding the correct competition and continue on. The right competition is out there for all levels and ages. Find it and do what you love to do forever. I don't agree. But to a certain extent, I don't agree. I did remember hearing a few years ago, I think Chael Sonnen or someone like that had suggested it, that maybe they do maybe the UFC could do a Legends League, where these guys get to fight each other, you know, guys who are kind of past their prime, but are legends, get to fight each other, I suppose. But I don't know, does that really make a difference, because you're still going to see one of them get knocked out or one of them getting hurt. So yeah, no, I don't really agree with it. You know, I like McGregor. I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but I definitely don't agree with this. You know, finding the correct competition and continue on. But for how long do you do it? Just until they die in the cage? I mean, when do they retire? You know, everybody's got to retire eventually. You know, and I think for McGregor that he should know better. There's a smarter way to go about that. I'm not trying to shit on McGregor. He's enough things other people shit on him for, but I mean, he's a smarter guy. He's a real smart business guy, you know. And at the same time, maybe it's okay for McGregor to say this, who has a lot of money and could walk away at any time. I don't know. I just think UFC have got to start stepping in a bit earlier and just saying, you know, your time is done. But then the problem is you're going to get these other, you know, organisations who are like Sharks, you know, Bare Knuckle and all these other. Not that I'm going to shit on them, but I just think they need to be smarter. And the fighters themselves move on, give the new guys a chance. You know, they have big names, fair enough, but they've had their time. What more, even if Silva was now getting a second wind in his career, what more can he do? Like, what's he going to do better than he's already done? Walk away like last night. I don't think he's going to get a better chance to walk away. He got to spend his time in the octagon. It was emotional. Just leave before, you know, he ends up getting a really bad knockout next time. His time is done. There is no competition for Anderson Silva. It's the UFC at the end of the day. You know, they're not, the UFC aren't, you know, they're not keeping around these useless fighters just for guys to be able to sort of put on a fight well past their prime. You know, so unless McGregor's suggesting that he goes to another organisation, maybe that's what he's saying. But no, retire. Look, I do remember Conor McGregor saying early in his career that he wanted to retire by like 30 or 32 and have all his money made and all of that. So it's, why say that and then say this? But yeah, it's just, again, it's not good to see. Yeah, but I do truly hope that he has retired and he's done. As like the big problem with this as well is, for me, who I am a huge fan of the UFC, and for a lot of other, like, I know friends of mine and stuff like that who really like the UFC, they know who Anderson Silva is, they know how good he is. Fights like last night doesn't really damage his career for people like me or them. But if you've got new people coming to the UFC, they're starting to watch it now, they're going to think he's, because they didn't really watch him come up. I don't think it does his legacy any good. So why hang around? Just retire or do something else. Become a commentator or something. I don't know, anything. There's got to be opportunities for him. But yeah, for the third time I say it, that's my rant over. No, but it was a good win for Uriah Hall, and it will boost his confidence fighting, a bit like Adesanya had said previously when he fought Silva, that they got to fight their idol. Yeah, I don't know what that's saying. The quote is, work hard so your idols become your rivals. So it is pretty cool, that storyline. But yeah, I'll stop ranting now about Silva, but just as I said, I was more pissed off watching that last night. It annoyed me to see that again, with them hugging each other and apologising for beating them, because it's like they know this guy got me 10 years ago, he would fuck me up. Excluding Izzy again. So you look at that. If you look at the middleweight division, outside of Adesanya, maybe Robert Whittaker, but even maybe not him, Silva in his prime, he still fucks up a lot of these guys. And he gives Izzy a good fucking test in his prime too. If not, I don't know who would win that fight. I think Izzy is a little step further, but it's only because he's watched Silva and he knows, he's kind of mimicked his game and gone a step further. But yeah, God, I find I'm repeating myself a lot in this one when I get in a rant. But yeah, good card. Pissed me off the main event, but yeah, let's just hope he's done now, and all the best to Uriah Hall and who he goes on to fight next. Says he's looking to get Izzy eventually. Don't agree. I think, fortunately for Uriah Hall, I think he's one of these guys who's just never going to reach his full potential. Like, he was on the Ultimate Fighter too, not number 2, but also. He was on the season with Jones and Chase Ullman were the coaches. Yeah, he was fucking tearing through everybody. He had I think 3 highlight reel finishes, one in particular with the back spinning kick, knocked some guy out cold. But yeah, it just never lived up to his potential, which you do see happen sometimes with the Ultimate Fighter. It's probably why people shit on it. But yeah, he's never lived up to his potential. In glimpses he does, and then like the next fight, he's very hit or miss. But I suppose it is something mentally, like his mental blocks or like confidence or whatever it may be. Maybe this fight will help, but I don't know. There's quite a few guys in that division I see beating him, but you never know. It was nice, actually. I will say one thing about the end of the fight. Obviously him and Silva kind of sat and spoke for a little bit over and back, wishing each other well and all that. Silva did say something to him about his confidence, about getting his mind right, and cool to see, I'm sure Hall love to hear that too. But yeah, that's that fight card. Pretty good fight card all round. Yeah, it was enjoyable, especially for just your average fight night. And then next week we have got, again, not a bad fight card. The UFC are kind of spoiling us lately, but it's Santos versus Techshira. Just looking at the prelims here, you have, I'm just going to pick out guys who are worth. You got Max Griffin is fighting Ramiz Brahimaj. Darren Elkins fighting Lewis Gregory. Alexander Romanov fighting Marcos Rogerio de Lima, which isn't a bad fight either. Trevin Giles versus Bevan Lewis. Yeah, so not the craziest fight card. That's the prelims. Moving on to the main card. Yeah, it's not bad. There's a couple of good names in there. Claudia Gadelia versus Yan Xiaonan. I always like to watch Gadelia fight. She's usually pretty interesting, and Yan Xiaonan is not a bad fighter either. Ian Heineck versus Brendan Allen in the middleweight division. Not bad. Bantamweight. You got Arlovsky, who's must be fucking 146 now, fighting heavyweight against Tanner Bozer. Arlovsky, another guy, like I was saying earlier, I think, fuck me, I think he should be done as well. Like, not like getting his ass whooped, but his chin is glass. He cannot be touched. He's around a long time. He was in the early days. I think he fought in Pride too. I just, great to see. Like, his record is 29, 19 and 0. It's insane. A pro record, but who am I to say? But I would like to see the UFC step in with some of these guys. But the main event, you got Glover Techshira versus Thiago Santos, which is a good fight. I'm a huge Thiago Santos fan. Big fan of his. I think I did say previously. Didn't I? Yeah, I predict him to be the light heavyweight champion next year. Unless you got this talk of Izzy going up now to fight Blachowicz. But yeah, Santos is my man for that title at some point, depending on what Izzy decides to do. Like, but I'm kind of sick of all these people jumping divisions as well, to be honest. But yeah, I do predict Santos to be the light heavyweight champion at some point. This fight will tell a lot because before this was when he fought John Jones, and took John Jones right to a decision on barely one knee. I think he completely torn the ACL in one knee and tore some ligaments in the other knee as well. Still kicking, trying to take John Jones' head off with kicks, and kicking the legs off him as well. So I'll tell you the heart of Thiago Santos. But this fight will tell a lot because Glover is looking like he's kind of got a second wind in his career. He completely dismantled Anthony Smith in his last fight. I think it was his last fight. Yeah. So yeah, that would be an interesting fight, and it will show. I would pick Santos to win that fight if he has recovered properly from those injuries, which are bad injuries in any sport. But yeah, I look forward to that fight. It'll give a good sense of, who's going to be Blachowicz's next challenge if it's not easy. But yeah, looking forward to that fight. Not the greatest card, but a couple of fights worth watching there, especially the main event. Definitely gonna check that one out. So that's next Sunday. Yeah, so that's it. I think I've covered everything for this week. Sorry, I'm just looking at my little notes here. Yeah, so that's everything pretty much covered. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and please give it a like, share, comment, and like I said, I love when people kind of we have a bit of banter and stuff on the YouTube channel, or just if you have any feedback in particular, I'd love to hear. Any things you want me to talk about, or anything if you want to correct me on something, I'll take that too. But obviously, I don't claim to be a pro fighter or anything like that. I'm just a fan, like a lot of other people. So I am gonna fuck things up and get them wrong. But do 100% give me feedback. Anything you want me to talk about. I am, as I said previously, working on trying to get a lot more content out. There'll always probably just be one podcast a week, but there will be smaller videos like I previously did with the movie, the Halloween movies, smaller, shorter videos. I will try and do a lot more of them, based on a lot of different things. Like I said, movies, maybe TV shows, maybe music. I'm a fan of all of that stuff. I'm just trying to find the best way to do it, to put them out there. But if any of you have any ideas, by all means, hit me up with them, man. write to me on any of the pages, the Go Grab That Day page, the Facebook page, the Instagram, or which a lot of you have been doing on the YouTube channel, which suits me fine as well. But yeah, again, I appreciate it. Hope you're all staying safe. All you guys back in Ireland, hope you're all doing right during the lockdown. Keep your heads up, it'll all be at an end soon, hopefully. But again, thank you. Like, share, subscribe, everything. See you guys soon.